Let's begin tonight with new legislation that will affect millions of Canadians receiving COVID-19 benefits. The government is proposing to raise the amount of money people can get when they transition off the Canada Emergency Response Benefit to employment insurance this weekend. Before, it was set at $400 a week for some workers, less than what CERB has offered since March. But now the Liberals want to raise that to $500, equal to CERB's payout. The same legislation also provides a 10-day sick leave benefit. Both were the two things NDP leader Jagmeet Singh demanded yesterday in exchange for his party's support in a confidence vote.
We were very firm on the amount has to remain $2,000. That was not the Liberals' proposal. Their proposal was to cut it to $1,600. It's a $400 cut. We fought back and we won.
Carla Qualtrough is the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. She's here in Ottawa. Hi, Minister Qualtrough. Good to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Minister, the new legislation that you have introduced, did you raise the floor for employment insurance payments to make them equal to what Canadians would have received on CERB to secure the NDP's support for the throne speech? Is that why?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, for the COVID recovery benefit, we've changed it to $500, yes. We've also raised the minimum amount people can get on EI. That's going to be done through regulation. In terms of the why 400 to 500, there's a number of factors that played into that. When I announced this a month ago, I said I was going to be flexible looking forward in terms of the amount we were going to offer. We were going to see what happened about return to school, see where the pandemic was, see where the job numbers were in August. That all in the mix resulted in a decision to put forth the same amount as CERB to have some continuity and certainty for Canadians.
So this doesn't have anything to do with the NDP's ask. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. We've had this conversation a couple of times in the last month. You're right. You have signaled that you would be flexible. But it was the NDP asking right off the bat to make them more on par with CERB. And then yesterday it was pretty explicit from the leader of the NDP, Mr. Singh, who said, this is what we need to see in order to consider supporting the throne speech. So was this a political move in the end? Because you ultimately could have done this right at the start.
Right. And I can tell you this has been in the works for some time in terms of raising the amount. Certainly happy that the NDP agree with this decision, and they have been calling for this from the start, and we're with them now on this. We think this is exactly where we need to be right now, given where everything else is in terms of the country.
So there was not, are you trying to say, I guess, that this was not a political move in any way? Because Mr. Singh just came out and took credit for it.
I'd honestly say it's a factor. It wasn't the factor because we'd been thinking about this for some time as the job numbers rolled in, as back to school started to play out, as we noticed things were picking up in terms of a second wave. The Prime Minister said it last night, we're in a second wave. We didn't want to have to 2 months from now raise it because nobody was working again. It made a lot of sense, and it happens to also have the benefit of helping us get this past the goalposts in order to get it legislated.
The other thing I noticed you say in the press conference earlier today, alongside the Deputy Prime Minister, was kind of urging the opposition parties to expeditiously, figure out a way to support and make sure that this legislation goes forward. And I wondered for a second if it was almost a bit disingenuous, only because the reason that your government and this legislation is up against a wall when it comes to timing is because it's only now introduced, right? It wasn't introduced 5 weeks ago, and it couldn't be debated in the meantime because Parliament was shut down, a decision that your government made. Is the onus really on the opposition to make this happen, or wasn't it on your government?
Oh, it's equally on us to make sure that we put in place legislation before all parties that they could see their concerns reflected in, that they could see changes that they had wanted to the CERB reflected in. We know the timelines that we've put in front of Parliament are quite extraordinary. We also had to make sure we got the financial authorities put into place. We wanted to be as transparent as possible in the schedule of all the different measures we would want to expect to keep funding moving past September 30th. There were a lot of balls in the air on this, and now that we're here, I guess that's why I was urging people to figure out a way forward so we can all get through this, given that we are here.
But don't they have the right to kind of comb through this and debate and discuss it to the degree that they want to, given that it is a significant piece of legislation?
Yeah, I think they absolutely do, and I know that's exactly what they're doing. Again, there's no surprises in the Canada Recovery Benefits piece. It's except for the increased generosity. It's the exact same parameters we described a month ago. The Labour Code provisions mirror the provisions that were in with the CERB, just providing worker protection for these leaves. They knew, all the financial authorities, that that are going to expire. Those things have been previously debated and legislated. So I guess my thought on this is absolutely this is time sensitive, and absolutely it's a tight timeline, but nothing new is in this legislation except for the change from 400 to 500.
So based on your conversations with the opposition, and I understand that this has just been introduced, so I'm not sure how thorough they've been, but given that CERB does run out so soon and that these benefits are needed so immediately, how soon do you think that this can actually come into force? Like, what is your best estimate at this point?
Well, I can tell you what we need to happen from a timeline point of view is we need, obviously, financial authorities that expire on September 30th. We'd like the new financial authorities for the long list of measures that are in the schedule of the bill to be in place in order for there not to have a disruption on the benefit side. Now, remember, 3/4 of people are going into EI. They're all taken care of. That's by regulation. Their benefits are secured. But for the people who are relying on the transition of CERB to the CRB, we need something in place at the beginning of October so that their benefits won't be disrupted.
And do you think that can happen? Because we're talking about a million yeah. Canadians right now.
It's a lot of people, and I think that it absolutely can happen. What I hope is that both the Bloc and the Conservatives see their concerns around disincentive to works reflected. I think the NDP will be pleased with the parameters of the CRB and of the sick leave provisions. And of course, everyone's pleased with the caregiving provision for particularly women who don't have the options they used to have in terms of care. So hopefully everybody sees enough in what they had been asking for that they can comfortably move forward on this for the benefit of all Canadians. And absolutely, it's urgent.
There was another kind of very, I thought, tangible, specific promise in the throne speech yesterday that I wanted to see if we could get some clarification on for our viewers, and that has to do with employment. It's the Canadian wage subsidy. We had spoken a few days ago about the possibility of it going further. The throne speech announced that it would go beyond December. In fact, it would be extended until next summer. The issue we had spoken about before was how there has been a drop-off in accessing the subsidy since the program was amended to kind of make it less beneficial to people who apply. So they'll just qualify for less money, basically, or less of a subsidy. Will that change? Like, are you looking at remodeling the program to go into it, or will it stay as is until the summer?
Well, as the Deputy Prime Minister announced today, we're looking at what the program parameters will be moving forward, certainly beyond December into next summer, and that she hopes to come back to Canadians very soon with those specifics around the I'd say the improved, and that's probably how I describe it, parameters of the wage subsidy. You know, quite frankly, for so many Canadians, the only thing between them and EI or them and this new benefit is the wage subsidy. So we got to make sure as many people as we possibly can be on the wage subsidy. It's significant. Pardon me.
Do you anticipate changing the parameters of the program prior to the end of this year, or is it as is until the end of December?
I think that's to be determined. I think the Deputy Prime Minister wants this program to be seamless, not clunky, not change to change to change to change. And so I suspect the parameters she'll put forward are very kind of seamless from now till the summer, a view of the program. The specifics of the parameters, as I said, she'll be telling Canadians very soon.
Is there an acknowledgement in the government by saying that we're open to changing the parameters, that perhaps the changes that were made following the end of the summer were to the detriment of those who were hoping to access it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say to the detriment, but I think it's this ongoing conversation we have about confidently course correcting when things change or when better ideas are on the table or when things don't work out as much as you had liked in any of these programs. We're doing this as we go along in some very real ways. And I consider it, I'd say almost a sign of confidence that we're telling Canadians, okay, we think we can do better. We thought this would work. We're going to try something else. And that's bought us a lot of goodwill, I think, the honesty piece around this.
Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to take away from the ability to be flexible and how you're responsive when things don't go well. I think there were some signals, though, from the business community that if they lost 30% of their revenue in September and only ended up with a 30% subsidy instead of a 75% one, it would not be sustainable. And we saw within a week of that change, you know, big establishments like hotels, for example, in Toronto and other big cities, laying off lots of their staff. And just the sheer data, as you point out, there were a lot less people who therefore applied after that change was made.
And as I said, I think part of it is waiting to see what the final application period data was, because I know at that time we were in the middle of the application and people can apply retroactively. So what we found in the wage subsidy is people will apply for last month, a month from now. It's not real time. So the data, I'm a little concerned about putting a stake in the ground on the data right now, because I think there's more data to come in.
And when will you know how much data is enough data?
Well, that's a good question. I think in the coming weeks, we'll have a better understanding of this past application period. But I wouldn't be surprised, because we've had people apply retroactively a month or so in arrears, just because that's how they do their business, and they get their payroll information and then it's a month later. It could be a good 3-4 weeks from now that we're still seeing new data from this application period.
Okay, before I let you go, one last question based on the throne speech. I'm sure you're well aware one of the opposition's primary criticisms of the speech was that it was so broad that, you know, even for a throne speech, there were very few details attached. Under your portfolio, one of the big promises was to create 1 million jobs. My question is a simple one. By when?
Wow. Well, hopefully in a year or so. Within the next year, we're looking to create, a future of work that's greener and fairer and more resilient to the economic shock that we're looking at. But, what that means to me is shoring up the jobs we have. So the wage subsidy is a big piece of that. As I said, it's for a lot of jobs, the only thing between there not being a job and there being a job is the wage subsidy. It's filling the jobs we have, right? There's a lot of jobs that are available right now, and we have a mismatch of skills. So that's the training money. And today we announced $1.5 billion to the provinces for training. And then it's developing strategies to create jobs and having appropriately skilled workers in those jobs. So listen, we're 1.1 million jobs from where we were even in February. So we need to create jobs soon, fill the jobs we have, and just get people working.
So I just want to be clear, because you used a couple of different words to describe it there. There was creating, but there was also filling. So is it not necessarily 1 million new jobs? It's just that you expect 1 million more people to be working in some capacity?
Well, I think it's 1 million more jobs. I think that's probably, a more, again, we're gonna lay out our job creation plan in the future for Canadians. But the way I'm looking at it is, right now we have 1.1 million jobs less than we did in February. Some of those jobs aren't coming back. Some of them might look different. So it'll be a combination of filling jobs that exist, creating new jobs through more appropriately trained and skilled workforce, and then developing strategies in new and evolving industries and technologies. It's a combination of all of the above.
So then, just so that I'm clear, so a year from now I can hold your government to account, what you are saying is 1 year from today, your plan is to have 1 million more jobs than there are right now, 1 million more people employed.
Yeah, well, you got me to say that, and that's certainly my hope. But, I don't know what COVID is going to throw at us in the next year, Vashti. So that's my working idea. That's my goal as we invest in training, invest in job creation. But you don't know what the pandemic is going to throw at our country, and we could be in a completely different place this time next year.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Minister Qualtrough. Appreciate your time this evening, as always.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Hi, I'm Vashti Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.